Ladies and gentlemen, Pat Scammell. Welcome to the show. Welcome to Become Your Own Superhero, Pat. How are you, sir?
G'day, Laban. How are you going, mate? Thanks very much, and looking forward to having a chat.
Brilliant. Coming live to us from the office of Zukaz over in Wodonga.
No, Wodonga. We're in the offices in Wodonga. Yep. Got to get our border pass to go back to New South Wales. But yeah, all good, mate. Loud and clear.
For our overseas listeners or watchers, Wodonga and Albury are towns in New South Wales and Victoria that are right next to each other. And because of the current COVID lockdown, you've got to show your travel pass to the Border Patrol there so you can go to and from work. So, but there's worse things that could be happening in our lives.
Exactly.
Now, Pat, you're our first middle distance champion on the show. It's a real privilege to have a man of your stature and caliber, and also the father of one of my cricket mates in Liam Scammell down at Melbourne University Cricket Club. So thank you again for taking your generous time and sharing with us today. I'd love to start off with a challenging one. If you could do your life over again, would you change anything?
See, that is a challenging one. Look, I suppose I would say this. I didn't plan to become an elite sports person, and for people that don't know me on the podcast, you know, as an Olympic and Commonwealth Games athlete for a long period of time. But interestingly, I came out of a team sport, cricket and football, because I was country New South Wales in Australia here, and we were brought up on cricket and AFL football because all we were Wodonga's close to Melbourne. The only thing I would say is that when I got involved in elite sport, I didn't realise how selfish you had to be so single-minded to be a track and field athlete. And I ended up being a track and field athlete for 17 years. So I probably would have done more work in that space with the psychology of the sport. That's the only thing I would have done in terms of, you know, my Olympics and Commonwealth Games, because I love people and I love communicating and I love being involved in team sport. And what I ended up being involved in was a quite single-minded, focused sport. You know, running 150 Ks a week. And we had training groups and things like that. And I had a couple of great training groups, one in the UK, where I lived in the UK for 4 years, and then another one, you know, here in Australia, a couple of training groups in Australia. And that was always good. But I think looking back on my life, to ask you that question, look, I think, what am I now, 59, I've got 4 beautiful kids, married. No, I think I'm pretty good. And only thing I said is probably related to my career in terms of athletics. I'll probably go back and say, okay, I wouldn't have minded making those adjustments. But I think if you're healthy and happy in your late 50s, you're going pretty well.
Well, it's almost a trick question, Pat, because one of the things that I've been working really hard on myself in the last few years is not worrying about A, what I should have done, B, what people think of me, and C, focusing on the future. Certainly by learning by mistakes and trying not to repeat mistakes. But I think, you know, your career, for those that don't know, you were in 2 Olympics, in the Los Angeles and Seoul Olympics in 84, 88, and you made 4 Commonwealth Games in addition to that. And I believe you were on the receiving end of being cut from at least 1 other Olympic Games as well, if you're happy to share that story with us.
Yeah, no, extraordinary. Yeah, it's funny, as my wife Lee said, that over our lifetime, I prepared to try and make 5 Olympics. I made 2, and they're hard things to make. And a lot of my, you know, peers and people who unfortunately through injury or sickness didn't make the Olympics. So, you know, I feel very blessed to have made 2. But, you know, I was disappointed in 92. I was the Australian champion. I won the Australian Championship in 1992 in Adelaide. And I was selected in a squad to make the Olympics in 92. And they decided there was 5 of us that were sort of put in a squad. They picked the team, and then they had 5 other people in a supplementary squad who were looking at depending on performances. So that was, so we travelled to the UK and were part of the team, had a ticket to Barcelona, and then subsequently they cut those 5 people from the team. So I had a ticket to Barcelona saying I was going to the Olympics, but then we got chopped. What's so funny about that was I did more to qualify in 92 than I did in 84 and 88. So that was quite disappointing, really. But look, I balance it out a little bit by the fact of saying, look, I know peers of mine and, you know, good friends of mine who, you know, didn't make Olympic teams because of sickness and injuries. And the fact that I went to 2, you know, I feel blessed to happen. But, you know, I was very disappointed. You know, someone told me that, you know, village numbers, the Olympic village numbers were smaller in Barcelona, down by 2,500. And they put this criteria, they had to be in the top 16 in the world for Australians. And at that stage, I was 18th in the world. So I got chopped. But what's ironic about that, the guy that won the Olympic gold medal was a guy called Fermo Cacho, and he was 32 in the world. So, you know, when you get, you know, 30 or 40 people, like in golf or tennis or any walk of life, you know, 40 best cricketers, you know, there's not a lot of difference between, you know, after the top 10, there's not a lot of difference in the next 30 or so. It's all very close. So, yeah, I was really disappointed from that. But as I said, at that stage, I had 2 small kids. You know, one of those was Liam. He was 2 or 3 and had responsibilities. So you soon focus and you've got to keep going. You know, you can't. I think that was the main thing is at that stage, I was a father. I was 31. I didn't have a chance. I really had to, you know, focus and get on and do what had to be done to be a family and get the family going.
Would you say becoming a father for the very first time totally shifted the amount of effort that you put into creating that safe environment for having a family?
Look, I think I had the realisation in 1988. I was ranked highly in the world in 88. So I ran the 10th fastest time in the world in 1988 for 1500. I'd had a very good season in Europe. I had some good races against some very good competitors, including, you know, Steve Cram, who was either 1 or 2 in the world at that stage, and had a great race with him in Crystal Palace in London leading up to the Olympics. And I had a particularly bad Olympics. What happened was I'd been living in the UK and I tried to base myself with the rest of the Australian distance running fraternity who were going down into Japan. But look, because of politics and sports, and I've been away from Australia and I've been living, I had to go into the village early. So I was in the village, I don't know, 3 weeks before my race. So look, I was pretty well cooked by the time I even got to the start of the heats. You know, I'd been in a village for 3 weeks where I really would have liked to have been outside, take the pressure off. And, you know, and I got a little bit sick and I probably made more of it. But what I was getting to answer your question was, at that stage in my life, I was 27, and I had my whole life built on one stilt. So if you think about a house that's built on one stilt, it can't stand up and it collapses down. So when I ran badly, didn't get past the heat, when I was ranked highly, I realised then that I had to make adjustments to my life and have a more balanced life. So to put other things around it, including, you know, work, study, and plan for the future. So when you have setbacks, it's like anything in the walk of life, that if you have setbacks and you need to have other pillars around you that support you going forward. And that's what I decided to make that structure, though, that I wanted to keep running. And I did. I kept running for another, you know, 8 years through until I was 36, 37. But I made sure I had, you know, study, work, family around, and I had a more balanced lifestyle instead of just being a singly focused athlete. And when that went badly, I had nothing else to fall back on. So that was a life lesson, really, after the Olympics in '88. And it's a life lesson for anybody that, you know, you need to have other pillars around you, whether it's your family, it's your faith, or other things that, you know, support you. So that was the changing point. I don't think I became any more determined or focused with my athletics when I started to have a family, but it's certainly was a, you know, real eye opener in the thoughts of, you know, having this little baby sitting in front of you, realizing that they were relying on you for their future. So that was, you know, wonderful, but also challenging. And any father or mother would, I'm sure, would say that.
Well, I've had the pleasure of meeting three or four of your children, Liam, Benny, and Jack. I haven't had a chance to meet. I think Katie's the daughter.
Yeah.
And long before this podcast came about, when I had met you, I had complimented you on how well you had raised those kids in conjunction with your wife, no doubt. And I think there's a lot to be said for that. A lot of the stuff that we talk about on the show, with particularly a lot of my own background, Pat, is growing up as a child of divorce and the impact that can have on the children and the family, and seeing the difference in what you would determine as a functional family environment, which on the surface of things, it seems like the Scammell family have it pretty well sorted. Is that a facade, or is that a pretty good guess of what's actually going on?
Yeah, no, it's a very good guess. I mean, Lee and I, we didn't realise this until we had young Ben, our boy with Down syndrome, intensive care in Melbourne in Box Hill for 71 days in 2015. I mean, it's a complicated story, but to cut a long story short, you know, Ben had a procedure. We came back up to Albury-Wodonga area. For people that don't know that, it's a population of around about 100,000 people. And we had our procedure done in Melbourne. After that procedure, we came back up here. He had a rupture, and it also then went septic up here. So then he was air ambulanced to Melbourne. And then we had 7 months in Melbourne, and 71 days of that were intensive care. It's a long way to get to answer your question, but the nursing staff and the medical staff said, you know, we haven't come across a family like that, and like you guys that communicate and love and laughter. And I suppose that's been our motto about, you know, we didn't think we were any different to anyone else, but, you know, we're on purpose. We try and keep things pretty simple, and we make sure communication's a big one in our family, and love and laughter. And if you keep it that simple, it works pretty well. And we didn't think we were that different, but after many times that nursing staff said how great it was to work with us, you know, it was a great honour for us to realise that, you know, that we have got some chemistry, and that in terms of family, it's like running anything, running a business, running a cricket club or a football club. And, you know, I'm really big on communication. I probably drive my kids nuts on that, and I think effective communication makes a massive difference in all sorts of things, in relationships, in business, and any walk of life. And if you can get through that with communication, you're halfway there. And I think that the strong thing about our family is communicating.
Well, I want to explore this a little bit further. What's a sign of great communication from a Scammell family point of view?
Yeah, good question. I suppose we would know, obviously, anything that's important that's going on in anyone's life. Now, all my children now are adults. Even young Ben, the boy with Down syndrome, he's about to turn 26. But and all the other three are young adults. But I suppose that everyone has a fair handle on what everyone else is doing in terms of where they're at in their life and their goals and dreams. So it's probably shared experiences, I suppose, is probably the best way to put it. I mean, I really can't put a finger on what is the panacea of what makes it work, but I would say that people don't feel left out, and everyone's included. It's very inclusive. So that's basically it, really, that it's a very inclusive environment.
Where did these attributes come from? Is it driven from your side of the family, Pat, or from your saint of a wife, Lee?
Yeah.
Or both?
Well, Lee's certainly Lee's certainly a saint. She has to put up with me. Look, both Lee and I came from, look, I honestly think there's a lot of thing about the Irish background, about the Irish, love laughter. They love having a good time, and they love people. And I think there's a lot of origins. Both our sides come from an Irish background, in various degrees. And I think there's a lot about the Irish that comes through in our family, which I love. And socialising, having a beer and relaxing, barbecues and communicating. And I think that influence, and I haven't thought about it until you had the question, but I think that's why we have a great affinity with the Irish, particularly us. And obviously my name's Patrick as well. And Lee's family came from an Irish background as well. So I love that connection with the Irish, and I love their personality. And so I think that's, and look, I think patience, you have to be very patient when you have children. And Lee has taught me that as well. And particularly when you have a person with special needs like we have, and he be under our care, he's under our care all the time. And so I think patience in family and understanding has been the crux to it, I suppose.
Well, just on your lovely wife, Lee, I heard through a family member that when Benny was going through that intensive care, 71 days in the ICU, whatever it was, that she reportedly never left his side. She stayed in Melbourne, I think, almost the whole time. And when I heard that, I got a little bit emotional, I must admit, because that's a huge commitment, and that's the sign of someone that has the patience of a saint. And I'm really keen to explore this, Pat, because you've competed at the highest level and have certainly been the top runner in Australia, and competed in 2 Olympic Games and 4 Commonwealth Games, and hold the record for the most amount of sub 4-minute miles in this country, as far as I'm aware, unless that's been knocked off in the last 24 hours. And I want to explore where you got these attributes of mental toughness and fortitude, because I had a look at my Strava before we jumped on here, and my fastest 400-meter time is 1:05, and it's the downhill section of the Anderson Street Hill. And I was running in Vibram toe shoes and had to take my shoes off because I felt like they were going to burst into flames. And I gave it everything. And the running that you guys do at this elite level, you're doing 400 meters every minute. When you're doing like a 1500. Yeah. So,
so 4-minute miles, that was why it was so magical. It's 4 laps under 4 minutes, obviously. Yeah.
So I want to know how you get to be able to push yourself physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, to be able to get to that level, because they are attributes that you picked up from something or someone along your childhood, would be an educated guess.
Yeah, look, it's a great question. I mean, where does it come from? I'm not sure. I mean, I remember at age 18 coming out to home and talking about what I was going to do, career-wise. And I came out to Mum and I said, how long will it take me to become the Pope? And she said, probably 50 or 60 years. And I said, okay. I said, I probably won't go down that pathway then. The analogy there was I was always ambitious. Now, I'm not sure where that came from, but if I go back to the origins of my schooling, I started young, 4.5 or just on 4.5, in class sizes of 80 and 90, and I got left behind. Yeah, and I got left behind at a young age. So I had learning problems at a young age, and the Catholic system in those days, and I'm sure they would acknowledge that, particularly was a pretty tough, demanding system in terms of the Christian Brothers, and you know, obviously a lot of great people, but it was also quite challenging, and you either had to, you know, survive in it. And I got left behind, and there was one particular time when in grade 3, I got in trouble for a spelling mistake with the Christian Brothers. And my mother, the brother wrote on the work, "This work is despicable." And went home. Mum told me this years later. And my mother had me, you know, Mum was older. So Mum was 42 when I was born. So how old was I then? I don't know, 5, 6, 7. So she's nearly 50. And I was the last of 6 from, as I say, an Irish Catholic background. And Mum charged down there, and all my other siblings all went through the Catholic system all the way through. From all their education was in the Catholic system, and she charged down to the Christian Brothers in school and said, the only good thing about this on Patrick's work is that young Patrick can't read the word despicable. And subsequently took me out of the school and put me over into the public system. So I went into the public system, you know, 2 or 3 days later, and it was life-changing. I always remember, and God bless her soul, I don't know where she is. She must have been a young teacher at that stage. She would have been 24 or 25. On day 1, at the end of the day, she came up to me and she said, after finishing work, she came up to me and said, "Are you okay, dear?" I thought I died and gone to heaven, because no one was saying that to me over at the Christian Brothers at that stage. As I said, and I shouldn't downplay the Christian Brothers, because they've done a great job over many times. And the way things have turned out, for, you know, a lot of good people have been hurt by, you know, smaller amounts of people who have done the wrong thing. But there was a lot of good people in the Christian Brother system as well. But in terms of, you know, the way the system was with overcrowding and kids in the late 60s, I got left behind. But when I went across there, it was life-changing. So I was behind, and I remember when I had to read in class, and people laughing because I was so far behind. So I think that drives you as well, when you realise I'm behind, and then people were laughing behind you, laughing to you because I couldn't read properly. And then I happened to be the best athlete and the best AFL footballer at the school for my age, and as I developed through. So I got my acceptance through sport. So I got confidence through sport, and I got acceptance as well. So I grew in confidence that way as well. And then as I got confident, my learning improved as well. So by the time I got to, you know, to high school, I basically caught up all my reading, and I was traveling with everyone else. I was never a great speller, and I'm still not, but I thank Bill Gates for all the work that's done on Microsoft. So I'm great. I'm okay on spelling now because of that. But yeah, so I think that drove me. I think that's the early origins of. But you know, if you get behind and then you're ridiculed, which I was, it's a deep driver. And but I know that my sport gave me the confidence to grow. And I say that to anybody that has. You just got to find your way, and you just got to have that support. And it only takes a couple of supportive people around people that can change people's lives. And it doesn't matter whether you're, you know, 7 or 70. You know, you can make, and look at what you've done yourself. It doesn't, you know, whether you're 30 or 40 or 50 or 60. You know, you can always make improvements, and you only need a couple of people to encourage you, and away you go. And so that's where the deep-seated drive comes from, and I've always been very determined. I don't know whether I've answered that question or what you wanted, but in terms of what happened with Lee and I and Benny, so in the ICU, he was comatose, so he had intubated and he was out cold. So what would happen is we would stay with him basically 16 hours a day in ICU, because there was no bed there. But when he started to come good and he was with it, because he didn't have the cognitive ability to understand that you had, at that stage, you had 11 tubes in, 5 going in and 6 going out, you know, drainage tubes and drugs and all sorts of things. He didn't have the cognitive ability to understand it. He'd pull them out or try and pull things out or try and pull his tracheotomy out. So we stayed in there all the time. And then the nursing staff realised the love and compassion that we had and realised that they, having us in the room with them, even though there was a nurse there full time, it was very important that they had a family member like Lee or I or one of us there all the time, so Benny didn't kill himself by pulling out his drugs or his medication. And so once he got so we stayed there until midnight. So this is when he was still medicated, but he was off. He'd wake up in the mornings, but still in ICU. So one of us would stay there until 12 o'clock at night, and then one of us would be back there at 5 o'clock in the morning, so back in the room. So that was, because the first 30 odd days, 35 days, he was knocked out cold, you know, he was in a coma. And in the next half, he was still in ICU, but, you know, medicated. And then we had another 5 months in hospital. And then after that period, so we had another 5 months after that in hospital. And Lee slept in the room every day. So she didn't leave that. Well, she left to have a cup of coffee and one family member had some breakfast, but she basically slept in the hospital for 5 months on a bed beside him. And look, Lee's a remarkable woman, and you know she's been a great balance for me. And I mean, I just can't speak highly enough of the balance that we've been able to get as a family, and it's worked out well, mate. I suppose that's why getting a life partner that works well for you is really important.
Well, where did you meet?
Gee, we actually met I actually met her through a running club. There was the Albury Athletic Club, and there was another one. No, we were actually the same running club. It was the Albury Wodonga Athletic Club. I first met her when she was about 15, and I thought, gee, she's a really nice person. And I said, I wouldn't mind marrying someone like that. I think that's what spooked me off me for about 5 or 6 years, because I'd met her when she was about 15. But we actually met up a couple of years later and started going out when we were 17, 18. So a couple of years later, yeah. So we met through athletics. And Lee was quite a channel of athletes, but Lee didn't like getting nervous in the competition, where I sort of thrived on the competition. I love, I'm a bit dogmatic, you know, like this is what Liam, my son, who plays cricket with your cricket club, I prefer to play like Jeff Boycott. Don't get me out. You bowl to me and I won't get out. I'm not going to let you get me out, So, if I'm 3 not out and off 50 balls, I'm happy, I'm very dogmatic on that. So I think that's where the determination comes from. And I don't know, it's just ingrained. And maybe that comes from the stuff at school where you get a bit ridiculed and you get left behind, and it makes you more determined.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. I've been thinking about the psychology behind this a lot, Pat, because, a lot of the things that I've had to, in my own journey, I've had to unlearn a lot of behaviors and am taking on as many new positive ones as I can. And there's no rule book for it. And in earlier this year, I wrote my very first book, and in there was a pivotal moment where a school teacher at the age of 6 gave my family $30 back in 1986 so I could have a birthday party, because we were broke. And when Mum was a single woman, and we recently reconnected, and I was able to read her the chapter of the book and she was named, and it was an amazing, humbling experience sharing that with her. And she was blown away, obviously. And, she remembered me as a kid because she was only a temporary teacher. But she didn't remember the actual act of giving. And it was really nice to bring that back up with her. And it was that generosity that she showed me that had a really pivotal effect on my life going forward. So I can see the opposite happening when the bad stuff happens, and the importance of being around as many good people as you can that are more likely to give you those positive reinforcements and give you the kick up the bum in a good way rather than, doing something dysfunctional. And it sounds like you might have had a couple of those good ones early on, enough to, maybe with a bit of natural talent, and then all of a sudden you're around elite level coaching, and then it just is a self-perpetuating cycle. How does that sound?
Yeah, look, for me too, I lost my father with cancer. He was 27. He was a great mate of mine, but, and again, Dad was older. He was 41, 42 when I was born, but he got to the stage in his career where he had more time. So even though, when I talk to all my siblings, they all had different experiences. And I was a bit fortunate that by the time that I came through, he was in management career and had more time. So I was a bit blessed, and everyone else had left home because I was sort of the last one at home. So I was blessed to have that. And him and Mum were, instrumental in helping me. So the love of family makes a massive amount of difference. And if you haven't got, like in your situation, you get a couple of people that give you that support early on. And look, you look at times like now, which are, globally very challenging. If you look through your database of contacts on your phone and you think, look, I haven't spoken to X for 12 months or 2 years, you're never quite sure, reaching out and saying, how you going to somebody makes a difference, because you're just not quite sure how they're going. So I'm a big one on that. I'm a really big one on that, on communication and just checking up on people and seeing how they're going. And, they'll give you as little or as much information as they want. But I just think that we all need a bit of support. Doesn't matter what part of life you're in. We all need, a bit of a question and ask, how you going. And this is a really challenging time for society.
Well, it's not the only great attribute that you've passed on to your kids, Pat, because in talking to Liam, one of the amazing things that he said that you passed on to him was the power of networking. Can you talk us through that a little bit more?
Oh, gee, I just realised that in business and in life in general, if you keep a vibrant network, that is the best way to sustain your career. And I passed it on to the kids. I found it in sport, I found it in business. And if you go about networking in a genuine sense, that you go in there with not all about you, but also an attitude, how can I help you as well in business? And it's a mutual two-way street. You get a lot of benefits out of that, and you're just never quite sure where it's going to end up. So you don't go out there with a plan, well, I'm going to meet Laban Ditchburn and say, okay, what can Laban do for me? It's more about how do we work together for mutual benefit. And I've always gone in with that philosophy about, how do we work? And I don't know where that comes from, but I learned it at a young age. And I like to give and take, and to be able to balance it out that way. So if you come across people and then people see you as genuine. I think the word genuine, if you come across as genuine in business or in sport, people see that, and that makes a big difference in terms of networking. If you're only going down there for only for the benefits of yourself, well, people see through that. But if they see you as a genuine character, interested in what they're doing, well, it's a great benefit for both parties. And I just keep on telling the kids, and I suppose, when I came out of sport, I focused on my athletics for 17 years. I did some short courses in management. I've been through the Victorian Institute of Management. I've been through the VIS in Melbourne later in my career, and they were sponsored by the Australian Institute of Management, and I did a lot of short courses through them. And then I had to get a job because I had 3 children after my career, and I started doing part-time work. And all my jobs came through networking, you know, ringing up and just saying, look, I'm doing this, I'm studying this. And so the hidden job market, I suppose, is where it entrenched in me that if you really want to get a job or you want to go ahead, you also just, besides doing the normal things through, you know, the standard market through Seek or social media, all those things, you've got to make sure you're well connected. And you know, when I had a young family, I needed to make sure that was, you know, I was. And I keep on saying to the kids, just keep your networks going and do it in a genuine way that, you know, you're interested in what other people are doing as well. So that's about as basic as it gets, really.
Well, no, I love it. And I was curious to know, have you ever done any work with Zig Ziglar or read any of his books or listened to any of his tapes?
No, I haven't.
So he's dead now, but he was largely regarded as one of the great motivational speakers and authors of our time. He was a devoutly religious man, but he only sort of found himself at that at about 40. But one of the great quotes that anyone who's listened to any of my other podcasts will have heard me say on many occasions, he's very famously quoted as saying, you can get whatever you want in this life as long as you help enough other people get what they want. And it really struck a chord with me. And I've tried to adopt that as much as I can, especially in the last 12, 18 months when I first heard his tapes. And we were fortunate enough to have his son, Tom Ziegler, on the show, which will be released by the time this comes out, and pick his brain with regards to the importance of coming from a place of, like exactly what you said, what value can I impart into this person's life rather than coming from a place of fear and scarcity. So I really identify with that. And wherever you picked it up, it doesn't matter. It's so important to a successful, flourishing life, in my opinion, at least.
Yeah. Look, even this morning, I had a friend of mine that missed out on getting a job. And I said, look, and he was going to ring up and say, you know, get quite crossed in saying, look, my resume does this and all this sort of stuff. And that might be the case. But I said, if you go in with that attitude straight away, you're going to put the people offside. So the trick is, and I've passed this on to a lot of people, is that, you know, if you miss out on a job, you just ring up and keep it simple and say, look, just trying to get some feedback because I'm trying to improve. You know, I'm looking to go in this space. Keep the relationship opening. And look, you know, one of the best jobs I've ever had was with the Australian Sports Commission, and I missed out on that job early on. And then I rang up and kept inquiring about, you know, what else I needed, and then 6 months later, I get a phone call whether I was still interested in the job. You know, it's just about communication. And if you get so upset with people and abuse them about why you're never going to get the job there, that's for sure. So it's just about finding, and you find out a lot about yourself. You ask the question about, you know, what else do I need to do? Or, you know, you learn much more by someone making these. Now, you might not agree with them, but you say, okay, I'll have a think about it. Yeah, maybe that's an area I can improve. And that's one of the things I've said to the kids as well. I mean, that's my kids and other people. I mean, you've got to think about, particularly employment and things like that. What can you learn from someone that gives you a knockback? And that's the only way you can't go in. There's no benefit to go in there and abuse someone because you didn't get a job. That's not going to help you.
And coming from 14 years working as a technology recruitment consultant, Pat, I couldn't agree with you anymore.
Well,
thank them
I didn't
for their
know
time. Thank them for their time and a lot of the, like, especially when you don't know what's going on in someone's life, a lot of the times the reason you didn't get the job has nothing to do with you. And I think once people get an opportunity to work in recruitment and they see how things work from time to time, then you just let it run and you go, okay, then that's not meant to be. And because you kept the dialogue open with, you know, the AIS or whoever it was, you know, they remembered how you made them feel. And had you gone off at them, there's no way you would have got that job. And you know, look what happened off the back of that. So, you know, I couldn't agree more with what you're saying. It's really, really important.
Yeah, it goes back to communication. And as I said, I bang on about it all the time about communication. And that's another functionality of that, of course.
I want to change topics just a little bit, Pat, because there's one particular story that I found out about, which I thought was very interesting. And if you're happy to share it with us, the story about you and Steve Monaghetti and Falls Creek.
Gee, well, the background of this is that Steve and I were training up at Falls Creek. I don't know, it would have been early 90s. And Steve and I, at that stage, I'd come across to Chris Wardlaw, who was Steve Monaghetti's coach. And if people know Chris Wardlaw, Chris was an Australian Olympic athlete. I'm an Australian Olympic coach and one of our great characters in distance running in Australia, as I said, and a very good athlete, or great athlete in his own right, representing Australia at 2 Olympics. So Chris was coaching Mona and I, and this is early 90s. And
what time of the year? It was summer?
Summer in at Falls Creek.
Which is a ski resort, for those who don't know.
Yeah, ski resort, yep. At about just about 1,800 feet, 1.8 metres, yeah. So about 6,000 feet, we're just below that. And this week has been, as people know, in Australian Alps, it can snow any time of the year. It's a particularly bad week. So most of our running had been done in the village, but Steve and a lot of distance runners, if Mono ever sees this, he'll laugh his head off, but they're fastidious about doing the same run on the same day to keep their routine going. So if it's a long run day on Wednesday or Sunday and it has to be done, you just got to be done, you know. So this was a Wednesday, and we had to do a long run out over the back on the high plains, so from Falls Creek. So there is the aqueduct from Falls Creek, which is quite sheltered by the trees, and then you spend, I don't know, 6 or 7 Ks on the bottom part of the aqueduct, and then you go up onto the high plains. And as we were running out onto the aqueduct, I said to Mona, mate, we can't go up onto the hill because we won't be able to see. It was already snowing. On the aqueduct. It was freezing cold. It was blizzard on the aqueduct with plenty of snow. I said, by the time we get up the top, we won't be able to see. Anyway, Mona being Mona, he said, no, it'll be okay. It won't be that bad. It'll be fine. No problems. So this run, for people from my running fraternity know it well, it's called Fitzgerald's Hut. So you run out from Langford's Gap up to Fitzgerald's Hut. And part of the procedure is that you have to run to Fitzgerald's Hut, sign the book, then back up onto the snow plains, and then loop back around onto the road, which takes you back to Langford's Gap. It's about a 16K run. Anyway, we got off the Langford's Gap aqueduct and made our way up onto the snow plains, and it was ridiculous. I mean, you could hardly see. But the funny side of the story, and I'm probably not doing it justice, there was a young father and his young son that were camping in the hut, and they had the fire going, they had all the equipment, they had the backpack, they had the billy going, and Mona and I ran in there out of the blizzard to sign the book, and just to make sure, we always signed the book, and we ran in there, and this guy, he'd probably been telling his father, you know, he'd been probably telling his young son, look, we're probably going to be camping here for a couple of days, you know, we'll have to stay here. And Mona and I ran in a pair of shorts and a t-shirt, maybe a long shirt, and a pair of gloves. And this guy was just looking at us like, I'm never going to see those guys again. There's no way they're going to survive. So we signed the book and headed off. And the other funny thing about it, and Mona wrote about it in his book or one article somewhere. I said, Mona, I said, mate, my hands are so cold. I said, I can't feel my hands. And he said, look, put your hands down the front of your pants and keep your hands warm. So here I am running across the snow plains with arguably, you know, him and Deep, the greatest marathon runners of all time for Australia. And I'm running with Mona with my hands down the pants to keep my hands warm. And we got back I don't know, but it was one of the stupidest things we ever did. But we were bloody lucky, I can tell you that. So it was a funny story, and I probably haven't done it justice, but I'll never forget the look on the father's face. He'd been telling his son that, gee, you know, we're going to be here for a few days. We might be snowed in. But when Mona and I ran in there, he just couldn't be bewildered. Anyway, good story.
It is a great story. And Steve Monaghetti, like, he's not anyone that I've ever had an opportunity to meet yet, but would he be your favourite distance running athlete ever, or do you have someone else in mind?
Well, look, I've been great mates with Deke and Mona. So I had two phases. I had with Deke and Pat Gerard early in my career when I was at the AIS in Canberra, and then the second part of my career with Chris Wardlaw and Mona. They both remain mates of mine, really good people. And look, the other one, people in the UK, if it ever reaches people in the UK, the guy called Dave Moorcroft, who was, I went and trained and lived in the UK for 4 years, and Dave's coach was a guy called John Anderson. I was coached by John. And Dave Moorcroft was a former world record holder for 5,000 metres. And Dave was, remains, one of my best friends. And he's with Deacon, one of the, those people who, I got inspiration from. And I think all those guys too, one of the things I loved about people like, and there's others, but those guys made it to, world record holders, world championship, world champions, Commonwealth champions, and they all did it clean. Whereas, a lot of, because of the Eastern Bloc influence, there was a lot of problems in the sport in the 80s and 90s, still with drugs in sport. But I always knew what gave me great heart in terms of the sport that sometimes struggled with drug culture, particularly from the Eastern Bloc countries, was people still made it. It took a little bit longer, but also maybe a little bit longer and a little bit more perseverance. But, you could do it as a clean athlete, and those guys did. And, that was always very encouraging. But in terms of distance runners, those are, there's others as well, but, Deke and Mona and, Chris Wardlaw, my coach, all outstanding people. So I had a lot of great role models, which is important, as we talked about.
Well, I was going to explore this a little bit more. What are some of the great attributes that you picked up from these heroes of yours?
Look, I think early on, particularly when I went to the AIS out of country New South Wales with Pat Gerard and Deke, a lot of the things I picked up from Deke, and Deke's a little bit older than me. Deke could be 5 or 6 years older than me, I suppose, was around about structure, commitment, passion, organisation, and also trying to keep a level head on the ups and downs. So I often came across people, and I think it's the same in life as well, mate, that you need to, you can't get too low and you can't get too high. I mean, the highs are great, but you've just got to keep a balance on things. And it doesn't matter what you do in life, if you can just bring them closer together, you'll have a pretty balanced life. So particularly when you're dealing in elite sport, I suppose I use that analogy more in sport, in elite sport, and in business, I suppose, as well. But if you can't get too hard on yourself in elite sport, and you can have great highs, but you just got to keep a balance on those things. So perseverance through hard times and keeping a balanced outlook, I suppose, is what I learned. And I think one of the things I learned of Deke, watching him train in those early days in Canberra, was, a lot of people, loved training with Deke, and they would come out, once a week or twice a week to run with Rob Di Castello in the forest in Canberra, and they'd try and beat Deke, and it never worried him in training. I mean, Deke was doing 180 Ks a week, 200 Ks a week, but as long as he did his training every day, he never worried about if someone beat him in the session. He was singly focused on the work that he needed to become world champion. So he never focused on someone coming out for a special session, to beat him when he was doing his hills or hard sessions. He just made sure that he had a body of work, and it was all about a body of work, not so much a single assessment. And it's the same with, you know, cricket, football, whatever. You know, to get yourself right to play sport, it's a body of work that gets you ready to perform. And mate, I know you love your cricket like me, and you know, it's a matter of just getting yourself in the right frame to be able to play your best on the day. And that's what I learned about just making sure you do the training to be able to do that. It doesn't matter at what level. You know, if you want to play, I'm trying to learn how to play golf at the moment. So I'm trying to put a body of work together that makes me better.
I want to know how painful physically it is, Pat, when you are 1.5 miles through a 1 mile. Sorry, if you're you're 1,500 meters through a 1 mile sprint. What sort of pain are you in when you're competing at the top level?
Yeah, it's a good question. I've been asked that a lot over the years. The pain you get is more in training, in preparation to do it. The work you do to get to that stage, because by the time you get to a race, yeah, it's difficult, but you're so focused on racing, you don't feel any pain. The only pain you feel more so, I found, was the work that you did in training and preparation. Yeah, it can be painful in a race, but it's not until the last, in my case, in the 1,500 metres, not until the last 300 metres, 200 metres, where the pace is really on. But a lot of stuff that you do in training is there to simulate what you're going to experience in a race. So you're basically training yourself to be ready for it. So if you come into a lot of pain in the race earlier than that, well, you're not going to hang on, you're not going to be in the race. So you're actually doing adaptation to the workload, to what you're going to experience in races. So I'd say a lot of my pain, or anyone's pain, is more in training than happens in the race, because you're trying to put out a perfect performance. So the pain in the race, you know, can come late, but a lot of the work is done, you know, in preparation to handle that pain. And if you can go to the line with a body of work, you know that you've done all the work you can, where you're going to perform well as well. So yeah, I'd say for me, yeah, races were painful, but you did a lot of work to prepare for that. And look, if I took you for a run now, or you went for a run now, as soon as your heart rate goes up, it's painful. So as soon as you go for a run, so your heart likes to sit at 60 or 70 beats. So as soon as you take it to 120 or 130 or 140 or 100, it's painful. So it's outside the comfort zone. Your mind says to yourself, why are you doing this to me? So then what you're doing in training is preparing yourself for a mental state to be able to handle that and do the physical work which your body can adapt to be able to run 4 laps under 4 minutes. Hope that makes sense. Sounds long-winded.
No, it's something that I identified with, and I, you know, for people that are listening that aren't distance runners or aren't crazy mad sports people, I think the importance of stressing that doing these things to our bodies and doing them relatively frequently is really amazing at resetting your own limiting beliefs about what's capable. Because, you know, David Goggins, the very, very famous African-American Navy SEAL, Ranger, ultra marathoner, I think he's done well over 100 ultras now, talks about this 40%, like when you think you are done, you've still got 40% left. It's like a governor system that our brains put in to stop us from injuring ourselves, but we're actually a lot more capable than what our body lets on. And that happened to me when I ran my first 100 kilometer ultra down in 2018 down in Anglesea, because I did my IT band and I had to limp for 50 of the 100 kilometers. But when I crossed the line, I was like, well, bugger me. Like, I did it. And what else can I do? And I think that's the thing I love about a lot of this, the elite level athletics and sport. And, you know, it's not that I'm necessarily just so interested in it. It's the impact that it can have on all other areas of your life. And that's why I was keen to explore the pain that you feel you know, would be very quickly forgotten by that elation of winning and the accomplishment of achieving these amazing things.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, one of the early things I learned too about the mind was, I'm not quite sure whether it was Ian Chappell, Australian Test captain, or Greg Chappell, his brother, Australian Test captain, that he said, and I learnt this from either one of them, I can't remember which one, but he said, when I walk, I think it was Ian, but when I walk out to bat, I expect that I'm going to get negative thoughts. I know I'm going to get negative thoughts about the bowler or what's happening out there. And as soon as that happens, I'm going to tell them to piss off because I don't want the negative thoughts, but I know that's going to happen. And it's a bit like in athletics, what I was doing. We knew the pain was going to happen or going to be part of the process, but you basically said preparing your body to minimize that through preparation and just tell it to piss off. And that's mental toughness, and that's what you train yourself to do. Because if you succumb to the first negative thought, well, as you rightly said, there's so much more capacity after that first negative thought. You get rid of that and you move on, and you just keep pushing yourself. I mean, for you, in your sense, I mean, your first negative thought might have come at 15K, and you've got 70, you know, you've got 85K to go. And you think, well, how am I going to do this? You know, so, you know, if you said, I'm going to stop, you know, I'm a bit sore, my hip, leg, or whatever, but you push on. You know, I tell this story about Lee's father, late father. He died, you know, a couple of years ago, and it's a good lesson for me as well. And you know, he was 58 or 59, and he was playing golf. And I said, "How's your golf going?" And he said, "Oh, look, I'm blowing out, but I've and my golf's not improving." I said, "Well, you're still young enough to keep on improving your golf." He said, "Oh no, I'm too old for that." And I thought to myself, because my grandmother was alive at that stage, and she was 96, and I said to Leo, "Well, you know, you can still push on to the next level." And I think that's the same in life, because I thought about my grandmother. If we decide at 60 or 65 or 70, it's time to retire, you've got 26 years or 36 years to slow down. It's a long time to slow down. So it doesn't matter what age you are, whether it's 50 or 60 or 70, or, you know, you've got a long time to slow down if you're going to live to 96. And, you know, you can make improvements or do other things in your life at any age or stage in your life. And look what you've been doing over recent years.
Well, and this ties into what you've been doing recently as well, because you had a heart attack not that long ago, and now you're training for a sub 3-hour marathon, which I think is brilliant. Are you happy to talk to us about your challenges with your Dicky Ticker?
Yeah. Look, I was caught out. I was shocked really, because I was going to work, and so it was the end of the day at work, and I went downstairs out of the office, down to the car, and I got a phone call from a work colleague. He said, "Pat, can you come back and sign the document?" And I said, "Yeah, no worries." And as I was walking back, I didn't feel great walking back up to the stairs. And I thought, gee, and I felt like I had something stuck in my throat, or like heartburn. Anyway, so I signed the document. I said, "Look, I think I'm just going to sit down for it." And the office staff are giving me a hard time. You know, the elite athlete can't make it up the stairs. Everyone's sort of, you know, mucking around a bit. So as what happens in workplaces. Anyway, I came good, and then I drove off, and then I was out at the supermarket, and I just spoken to my older sister, and it was her birthday, so I'd spoken to her, and then I went into the supermarket, and then I had the same experience in the supermarket. I thought it didn't feel very well. And I got home, and I happened to come in the front door with Lee at the same time. And I said, "Look, I'm not feeling very well. I've got something, feel like I've got something. So I think I'll go to the hospital." And she said, "Are you sure? You sure you're okay?" I said, "Yeah, I just haven't had this feeling before." And I really wasn't thinking it was a heart attack. So we drove off, which was about 5 k's to the hospital here in Albury-Wodonga. And as we got to near the hospital, the feeling had gone. I said, no, I'm fine. What am I going to tell them? Lo and behold, Lee at the time said, thought to herself, gee, maybe we should go in there. I said, no, I'm okay, or we can go back home now. I thought it had gone. Little did I know that I was actually having, mild heart attacks at that particular stage. So I went back home, had a bath, had something to eat. I don't know why I had a bath, but I decided to have a bath and something to eat. And then I was in the bath, it came on me again. I thought, this is no good. So I got out. I said, Leah said, no, this is no good. I said, something's really going on. I really wasn't thinking it was a heart attack. So we drove off. And by the time we got in the car and we got close to the hospital, so we're probably 400 or 500 metres from the hospital, I was getting in a lot of trouble. And I was doing all I could in terms of my breathing techniques, all the things I'd learned as a track and field athlete to slow my heart rate down and to calm myself down like you do before races, went to Commonwealth Games. I was just trying to really calm myself down. So we got into the car park and Lee was going to go up into the car park. And I said, no, you've got to go. Come on, straight into the emergency. Where the ambulance is dropping. So she had to go up a one-way street. So I was obviously, by that stage, I knew I was in a lot of trouble. I ran in. There's a poor guy that had a baby with croup. I basically knocked him over to get in past him. I said to him, sorry, mate, I've got to go ahead of you. Thank God there was someone at the triage. And I said, look, I'm not quite sure what's going on, but I've got something going on. Well, she had one look at me and threw me straight into the room, and the rest is history. So I was having mini heart attacks, and then I ended up having a stent, air ambulance out of Wodonga to Melbourne. I had a stint in Melbourne the next morning. So, and look, the doctors said, a lot of people die if they don't make it to hospital. So, I think that the saving grace for me was I knew my body very well from the track and field days, but any signs, the frustrating thing is the cardiologist in Melbourne said to me that heart health has done a lot of great things in terms of awareness about diet and exercise, cholesterol, all those things. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you don't still have problems with your heart. So it's always worth getting checked out and making sure that your heart's going well. So I was lucky. If I decided to stay at home and be stubborn and say, I think I'll have a couple of Panadol and go to sleep that night, I probably wouldn't be here talking to you, mate. So I'm blessed I'm here. The thing is I knew myself pretty well in how I experienced, and yeah, I'm going to try and run a marathon next year. So I'm going okay. Thank you.
Fantastic.
That's 2 years. That's about 2 years. A bit 2.5 years ago. Yeah.
Well, we still have you around, which we're very grateful for, and I'd love to ask you another real curly one, Pat. What do you want your tombstone to say? What do you want to be remembered for?
Yeah, look, I probably need more time to think about it. Look, I think a person that loved his family, loved life. I mean, I don't know what words you would put on it, on a tombstone, but look, having experienced a child with special needs, with Ben, he needs care all the time, and he's independent in terms of going to the toilet and all those things, but he can't go down the street on his own. And some of these kids with Down syndrome can, but his IQ is not at that level, but he's a very engaging character and things like that. And that's been my big focus now in our life, is that we support him, and that's been very humbling, supporting someone's life all the time. I've gone off track a bit, but when he was dying, it made me realise how important we are in his life, and we're committed to that. Look, I don't know, mate. I suppose a person that loved his family, loved life, and gave it his best effort. I mean, I kept on pushing with my athletic career up until I was 36, 37, trying to make Olympics, make an Olympic final, be the best I can. And I think that's probably, what I would think. Always gave his best, always tried his best, always encouraging. So there's a lot of messages in that, but always encouraging, always try and do the best and trying to get the best out of yourself. So that's probably about it, mate, really.
Oh, look, don't feel too bad, Pat. I've really thrown you under the bus there because it's something that I think more people need to think about. You know, what's going to be my legacy? And it ties into a lot of the stuff that you're talking about and the sacrifice that you've made, you know, with Benny and that you know, but the wonderful lessons that you're clearly getting from these experiences. And I think if more people sat back and went, you know, what do I want to be remembered for? What impact do I want to have on this planet before I go? It would allow people to maybe do more of what they are really passionate about. And this is only from my own experience where I did what I wasn't passionate about for a long time, for 14, well, all of my working life really up until recently. And how good I feel doing things that I really love and how much more of a positive impact I now have on the world around me. It's just chalk and cheese. So it's a tough one to answer. So I think you answered it pretty damn well, considering there was no preparation for that at all.
I know this has come up, and I listened to the podcast with Justin Langer, and I love his stuff on leadership. I love that stuff, and a little bit. I think he made a reference about your becoming your own superhero, and I thought about your superhero, and I was wondering what who was my superhero when I was a kid, and I thought, I'm going to go back and have a look. And so my superhero as a kid, which is bizarre, was a character called Speed Racer. And I looked it up on Google. And Speed Racer was a cartoon character from Japan. And he drove a car. And I can remember going out as a kid trying to jump over things or, fly through the air. And everyone has a superhero. And I thought, what a great thing to do. And it drove me to go back to my childhood to have a look at who was my first superhero, and Speed Racer was, and it made me laugh. It was really very, very interesting, and we all have that part of it in our body, and I loved it when you got that as your part of your podcast. I think it's terrific.
Well, yeah, I thank you, and you'd be amazed to know that I know that cartoon. I think it goes, "Go Speed Racer, go Speed Racer, go."
That's right. That's
Is that the one?
Right.
And it used to have like the typical Japanese cartoon with all the great stuff. Yeah, I remember that from my youth as well.
Yeah.
Pat, I'm very respectful of your time. I know you're a busy man. You're the co-founder of Zookaz. Would you like to finish? Would you like to finish on anything before we wrap this up?
No, I am interested just quickly about for you and what you did in terms of your own personal growth, about how you changed and what was the light bulb that made it for you. I'm really interested what that turning point, if you don't mind me asking you, that back of you as I take over the host role.
Well, this is a rare treat. I'm being interviewed on my own show. How fantastic. And I love talking about this stuff, Pat. And look, it was a number of rock bottoms for me, but one of the fundamental things that made me do something about it was this moment where I was lying in my bed on a Tuesday night with about 3 bottles of red wine coursing through my veins, gambling on a horse race in a country I wasn't even in, spending rent money that wasn't mine. And I thought, you know what, Laban, the life that you imagine for yourself is not this. And you are supposed to be doing far greater things. And the catalyst at that point was reaching out for help. And I rang the Gamblers Helpline and got put in touch with a counselor who spoke to me about the incredibly high rates of suicide that are associated with gambling versus all the other addictive behaviors. And that really shocked me. And then I got access to a gambling counselor. And after the first session, she spoke about the link to escapism as a result of growing up in a dysfunctional environment as a kid. And as soon as she spoke about that, it triggered this journey that I've been on since, understanding what went on, realizing that these things aren't bad things that happened to me. They've now become the fuel for my fire to be able to take ownership of everything that's happened to me and use it to help propel me forward. So that's what's happened. And I finally got to a point where I love who I am. And when you properly love yourself and you start respecting yourself and you start treating yourself with kindness, you don't do as many self-destructive things. And as a result, you start bringing more positivity in your life and start bringing more positive people as well. So that's a very short overview of what's gone on. And hopefully that answers your very, very generous question. And it's
great.
So still a work in progress, but I'm celebrating my sorry?
So that again, you're celebrating your
fourth year of sobriety on the 26th of August, 2020. And, one of the greatest things I've ever done for me and my immediate family and hopefully other people in my life as well.
Yeah. And if I can take the liberty of saying this, which I don't know whether your listeners have seen this, but I've seen a before and after shot of you in the gym, and you've made a massive difference in your physical space as well. So congratulations. And that's not easy. That's hard work to do as well. So congratulations. And I love this self-improvement area. It's a great area, and we're all capable of it, and right through our life. And that's why I was really keen to talk to you, and I really loved the opportunity to be able to chat to you.
Oh, well, I mean, thank you so much. And it's been an absolute thrill to have you on the show. And I know that our listeners will take little snippets of gold from the amazing life that you've led and some of the amazing attributes that I think sometimes these elite athletes can not take for granted, but forget how powerful they are to, people that could only dream of competing in the Olympics, which is something you've done a couple of times. So we are very grateful. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Pat Scammell.
Thanks, Laban.